Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we come to you after being in a land of fantasy and make-believe, and we are trying to re-inhabit our meat suits to record this week's episode. Boy howdy, it's a little difficult.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it in hobby time. But following our recent 4-day Warhammer 40k extravaganza, I guess I'll say, which was incredible. I'm still riding high off of it. I can't help...
I'm still painting.
I can't help but hear the party boy in my head when you do that. Just like
I'm sorry.
Chris Ponty as a party boy.
distracting?
Yeah, I can't help myself. I also did some painting. More to come soon. But we're really deeply enjoying 10th more than we have a lot of editions. But 10th is a little different in a couple of ways. And I think one of the things we saw a lot of differences in is list building. And mechanically, it probably, at first glance, doesn't seem all that much of a change. But John and I think there's more under the hood than you might initially see. I mean, John, your lists ended up looking quite different compared to what you thought they would.
My list changed dynamically over the course of the entire 4-day, and I've continued building them. They've continued changing and getting weird and wilder.
Yeah.
I've been building lesser factions I even have just because it's a much funner, simpler experience. It doesn't require like hours of research.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a great time just building lists on top of, playing them. It's like a seamless experience.
And I find I'm taking different things in those lists that I'm like sort of theory crafting than I was in previous editions. Just sort of naturally.
The mental calculus of is this data sheet good is a lot different.
Boy howdy, is it. And we'll talk about it. And I think there's enough here that we're going to do a full episode on 10th edition Warhammer 40k list building. Sort of some fundamentals around how it's changed mechanically. And then what that might mean for you, and what it might look like. But first, hobby time, and games played. All right, John. What have you been up to?
Me? I've done a lot. I went to LARP this last weekend. Played a ranger. I was the Beastman with no horns. It was great. Had a wonderful time fighting a bunch of monsters in the woods, playing, pretend.
We hadn't gone to a LARP in like 4 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. It'd been a while. But we did that. It was great. Because, we hang out and do more than just play Warhammer together. We also go do other stuff. Like,
you think our life might just be this, but there are other hobbies. Sometimes you want.
There's so many.
Sometimes you want to dress up in like a weird little costume and like put big old antlers on your head, a big spear, and go poke people.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Give people moral quandaries and lessons to, really reach these keys.
Gotta reach these keys. But after all of that, and a little bit before, I've worked on stuff. So after that, I finished Lion, Sons of the Forest. Phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, you should. It really shows different Primarch interactions than we're used to. Mm-hmm. We're normally used to the milk toast Gilliman with some dips into moral ambiguity, and then we're used to the mustache twirling evil of the demon Primarchs in the current setting. I think Lionel Johnson has a different take, and it's very, very different than anyone else, and he is the first Primarch I think I can honestly say is way better in the current setting than he was in the old setting of Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
It's hard to talk about a lot without spoiling stuff, so I'm going to keep my thoughts brief, but I think he has a unique set of selection pressures that might push him to react a little differently than someone like Gilliman, particularly with the Fallen and everything that would involve.
Yeah, it's a very good read. You should give it a chance if you're even thinking about it. And because I have been reading that for the last couple of weeks, listening to it on Audible, like on my commutes and stuff, I decided to paint the lion. So I have him, painted him. He's, I think, behind me on the shelf somewhere. But yeah, I just painted him up. I'm not a perfect painter by any means, but I tried a little bit harder than I normally do, and I'm very proud of it. I can see like where my growth has gone as a painter. I previously did something similar with Abaddon, and I pulled him out to look at it. So like I looked at Abaddon, I looked at the lion, and I realized I've made a lot of like advancements in like where my lighting has coming from my highlights, where like my colors blend, and like the separation between that, and just how much neater my painting is.
Yeah, your general sort of hobby growth. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to do that every once in a while. Like test the limit, go a little bit harder on something, and see how much you've improved based off of something that you've done previously years ago. And that was a very rewarding, fun experience. But I didn't just end there. I didn't just read a book and go to a LARP and paint. I also played a game, because playing 10th edition is easier than it's ever been. And I played a game of Genestealer Cult, one of the hardest factions in the game apparently, to like play historically throughout all the editions on a weeknight after work when I was already tired against Chaos Demons, and it was a close game. It wasn't a washout. It was great. I don't know how to put into words how exciting it is that I can get in a game, like a cerebral game of Warhammer after work, and it not feel like a Herculean effort because of 10th edition.
Yeah.
And especially against something like Demons.
Which is a weird matchup.
Yeah.
The board control they have is very unique.
Yeah, and so it's just been banging on all cylinders. Very, very fun, very engaging. I know we've been talking a ton about 40K, but it's the season, right? Like, we just gotta...
Enjoy it while it's here,
go.
you know? Like,
yeah.
When you're feeling it, you're feeling it. Why fight it?
Gonna be working on printing some orcs, so we can do a teaching day. Do a whole day where we're gonna teach a bunch of people how to play Warhammer. It's gonna be good.
It's true. And that's gonna make a little comeback in my own hobby time. Hint, hint, week.
Yeah. That's been my time. What about you? What have you been up to?
I've been at a LARP.
Yeah. Old man.
And prepping for a LARP.
Do you have decrepit knees?
Actually, I felt great. I've been working.
We LARPed for like 6 years. We are so prepared to do this at all times.
It's true, but I'm playing a different character, and I'm also doing like a heavy makeup and costume race, which I never do. So there was a lot of prep last week, which did slow down some hobby. Like, y'all, I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, there was some time trying to get everything together to play this like big elk boy. But in between all that and going to cool Fantasyland, I did get some hobby done. And a fair amount of it, actually. The elves, I've started working on prepping them to get their paint color schemes tested. So I got a number of them magneted and also primed and then zenithaled so that they are ready to be test painted when I'm good to go. Also, my wife is wanting to try Warhammer 40K 10th edition because the simplification gives her some hope that she might be able to play it and have a good time.
Yes.
And she loves them their Night Lords, John.
War crimes.
Woo! So I sat down with her.
Blink twice if you're in danger.
For those who cannot see, that's a bit where I blinked a bajillion times. Yeah, so I've been helping her. So she made her first list of Warhammer 40K 10th edition, called it Baby's First War Crime. And it is very Marine-centric, because she's been reading the Night Lords trilogy, and she really likes the fact that the Night Lords lean towards Marine rather than Demon, as much as is possible. So she is trying to run with it. So we've got like a little list picked out. And I found some 3D prints that are really cool from a guy on Cults 3D. Actually, I think we should like link his stuff down below, because it's like top tier stuff. He's also got some Dark Angel stuff, if you're looking. But Damza makes stuff. Damza print stuff.
I've seen this stuff.
Yeah, it's
good.
It's down below. But he makes some incredible Night Lords STLs. And grabbed some of those, and now I'm getting ready to actually start 3D printing her force. And I 3D printed a test mini for her of Talos, which is a character from the novels. And I'm working on test painting him right now to help her make a color scheme.
Oh no, you have to paint something you've been wanting to paint for years.
Oh no, I've only read a little bit of the book because I read the book and went, Joe, you cannot keep reading this book. You're gonna play Night Lords, and like you don't want that for yourself. You got to put this book down.
But now you can go read it because your wife's gonna have the army.
Yep. So now I don't have to feel bad. She's playing Night Lords. I'm just also gonna play Night Lords from time to time because I got to learn the army to help her, of course, only to help her. Duh. Yeah, so I 3D printed Talos, and she found like a really cool paint scheme online on a YouTube video. But it's just like the techniques are just a little more advanced than where she's at to comfortably paint. So she wanted me to like look at this vibe and try to simplify the process just a little bit to cut out some of the more difficult, time-consuming like edge highlights and workups and shade recesses and stuff like that.
Yeah, just cut out some of the more frustrating parts so that the overall experience is just more enjoyable.
Yes. Especially for someone like her who's earlier on in like the painting journey. Like I don't want it to be something that is painful to do. I want it to be fun. Because sometimes when I was early, I didn't learn that myself.
Yeah, like me too. Like starting off earlier with very little support, especially because the internet wasn't super big about Warhammer at the time. Like, it is just really hard to paint. I mean, I played the game for years without painting a single model because I was like, oh man, this is hard. And I'm bad at things that I'm not immediately good at.
Yes, that's how things work.
Now, if I'm not immediately talented in it, why care?
Because how do you get good at anything?
Yeah. I've changed, Joseph. You look what you've done to me.
You're welcome for my surface. Yeah, so because when I was earlier on in the paint journey, like I would just try to do like the hardcore paint things, and of course fail miserably at them, and then get disheartened. So I'm just gonna cut all that crap out for her. So I'm working on it. But then I ran out of time because LARP came around. But I did my best. I did. Now, though, I've got to do some digital kit bashing for her to help her like build her first Marines and then get those 3D printed so that we could do the little teaching day. We're going to take a couple of people who are newer to the Warhammer 40k hobby and teach them how to play 10th. And a little get together appropriately scaled for their level of experience.
Mm-hmm. Which
should be fun. And if I can make this paint scheme easier, I can help her to make that force.
And really, it's just an elaborate scheme to have more people to play these games with for, long periods of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's truly a selfish act we're doing here.
Altruistic. All the way down. Promise.
Uh-huh. And now I'm getting ready to work on that a little bit more this week when we have a little bit of time. And now that LARP is over and I have to shift gears. Unsuccessfully.
Good news, you got a manual transmission.
Yeah,
you're not running on automatic like the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like double clutch to try to pop back into second and go into 10th edition. We'll see what I do. In the meantime, Seth, play the music. All right, John. If we're going to be here talking about 10th edition list building, I think first we have to mechanically cover what changed in the rules for 10th edition list building. So that we know not just like in theory what has happened, but what literally has changed in the rules to cause everything. And honestly, they're not a lot of changes, but they're impactful ones.
Yeah, I think the first and most obvious one that everyone's going to run into is that there are no more detachments, nor are there a lot of like battlefield roles.
Mm-hmm.
So things basically boil down to leaders, battle line, and everything else. And so you can only have 3 of any one data sheet in your list,
Mm-hmm.
except for battle line and transports, which you can have 6, and you're only required to only have 1 leader in your army. Everything else is optional, as long as you get up to those points. The only other restriction being you can't have more than 1 epic hero in a list.
Of course.
So, like, you can't bring 6 Abaddons.
Yeah.
Or 3 Abaddons.
Which
you can bring 1 Abaddon.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Also, another change that has happened mechanically is that now most heroes are leaders, and those leaders lead a unit by going inside of it.
Yes.
And there is a list of what they can go into and everything else they cannot. The only exception to this is that there are a few leaders that can run around on their own, and a lot of them have the lone operative keyword where they still get like protection even though they aren't in a unit. These are for like the biggest billies of the Billy badasses. And that also is a mechanical change.
Then the next big mechanical change is that you still pick a detachment, but that detachment doesn't dictate like what units are going in what slots, but instead dictates what stratagems you have access to, what relics you have access to, and what data sheets you use.
Yep.
Currently, that is less of a restriction, but as Codex come out, you'll probably see more of that. Currently, it's mostly for stratagems and relics, like what stratagems and relics you want, and what detachment rule you get. An example, Dark Angels have the Unforgiven Task Force or the Gladius Task Force. You pick one of those two. If you take the Gladius Task Force over here, you get access to the same relics that every other Space Marine chapter does. You get access to the same detachment ability that every Space Marine chapter does. But if you take the Dark Angel specific one, you get the Dark Angel specific relics and stratagems and yada, yada, yada. But you can use the data sheets for everything in Dark Angels in either.
Yeah. I think before detachments were to... most people thought of detachments as a list building restriction that you had to try to like optimize your way around. Now, really, like a detachment is just a sub-faction, so to speak.
Yes. It's a choice you're choosing.
Yes. And those are the big mechanical changes. You know, there's only a couple of them. Handful.
Well, I think you're forgetting about one kind of important one.
Oh, John, surely my brain is impervious to forgetfulness.
The final one. I'm sure there's more that we've missed, but the other big one I would say is like very important is that the way that missions have changed. Missions impact list building now more than you would expect because they are not static.
That's an objective change, not a list building change. John.
All right, fine, pedantic. Anyways, you now draw from a deck to help determine what your secondaries are, which means previously in a lot of other editions, you would build lists based around like being able to guarantee on these couple of secondaries. It's not the case anymore. Now you need to be able to be a little bit more flexible, and so naturally your list building like ideas have changed. And we'll get more into that later and why that's important. But it is a rule that changed. I wanted to talk about it up at the top.
In literally a second, because you know it's next up on the outline, John.
Oh, is it?
Effects of what this might do to your list picks.
Whoops.
John.
Let's continue. We can't play the music. It's in the middle of the topic.
It is the middle of the topic, literally. Just like blowing up my whole spot. So yeah, not a lot of mechanical changes, but maybe sometimes some stuff in the game that isn't about list building will affect list building. John. One of those changes is indeed objectives, even though John talked about it outside of order. Objectives are random, and a lot of times to score them, you have to have a character not a character, you have to have a unit get into a particular area. They have to give up shooting, and they have to give up charging that phase. Well, that turn, right?
Generally, yeah. And
you have to do them if you want to get points for most of these secondaries. Some of the primaries, even. Like, it's a thing. And in that case, I think the objectives influence your list building heavily because you need people to do that. You need units that are fast or can deep strike, one or the other, that you do not mind giving up the shooting from, and that you don't mind giving up charges from, so like you don't have to give up a melee phase or something. Generally speaking, also you want them to be kind of cheap, so you can have a couple of them. So you just have one little unit doing all your heavy lifting. We've called these action monkeys here on the channel, but really that's all you want them for in theory. They can do more sometimes. But I think one of the big changes to list building practically and what this is going to do to you is I think it's going to be fairly rare that you go to make a list and you don't take action monkeys.
Yeah.
And that was really not the case in previous editions.
Yeah, previously the trigonometry calculus spreadsheet thing was, do I do enough damage to kill X, or can I take enough of shooting from X units without dying to earn my points? And now that is not the only things you care about, because you also care about how flexible is a unit, how much damage do they do relative to their points, and how tough are they relative to their points, and the ability to be flexible and still get objectives done. It doesn't sound like a huge change, but when you sit down and start to build some lists, like I built a couple of lists of Dark Angels that were just super elite, very powerful, full of sucker punches. Really hard to actively play the game when everything you're throwing is haymakers and you don't have anything sitting down and tapping on a keyboard.
You got no jabs to set you up. Like you got nothing. Yeah, he sent me that list. Like, what's doing objectives here? Like, what? Which one of these uber kick-ass units do you want giving up an entire shooting and charge and melee phase? And the answer turned out to be
it's like having
none of them.
It's like having Sylvester Stallone star in a reenactment of Hackers.
I'd watch the shit out of that.
It would be pretty dope. I said it. Now I kind of want it.
A terrible example, Mod Frere. I'm here for it. I think action monkeys are going to become central to every list, and it's true. I mean, in 9th, one of the things that really bothered me is the only way to evaluate units was how well do they kill stuff. Here,
not even how tough are they, just how well do they kill stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Can they uber obliterate something from orbit before the enemy has a chance to respond? And if they could do that well, 2 thumbs way up. If not, people would call them trash on the internet. And you would never see him.
When the line released and everyone was like, he's trash, I was like, oh no, what has this edition become?
His stats are incredible. He's still trash. Like, okay, maybe the stats aren't the problem. Maybe the game's the problem. Now, I think that's not going to be the case. You're going to have a little unit that might be like 70 points to bring, but it's going to get you like 20 victory points across a game. And that's a well-made investment. That's your 401k in Wargaming.
He just earned his points.
You're getting like a 6 to 8% return on that investment. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all.
I think that the next thing after that is you really want to look at the power pairs.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah. A lot.
Like, you have to pick leaders. You're going to pick at least a leader. They can only go in certain units set on their data sheet, and you're going to really want to pair them up with something that really benefits from it, right? Like, you don't want to take an ability that's on their sheet that you're paying for and just not use. You're going to want to find the synergies and see how many leaders do you want to bring, how many power pairs do you want to bring in your army, and how many units you can bring that don't require that like power pair support. And sometimes there's different things. I think guardsmen are a good example, right? A 20-man block of guardsmen is really good. Like, say, Death Corps Krieg is really good if you bring in Death Corps Marshal with them. Or like a Primaire Psyker and give them a 4-up involved in shooting. But you're not going to take that same 20-man guardsman squad without a leader.
Yeah.
You're going to take a 10-man guardsman squad.
To chaff line or to sit on an objective or to do an action or, whatever.
They have different purposes of that. And I think that's one of the other big changes is that units and the size of unit you take drastically change depending on what your purpose is going to be. And some units you just don't bring unless you're bringing a leader with them. And there's other units you bring and never put a leader in them.
Mm-hmm.
Interceptors and Space Marines is a good example. Like, those are action monkeys. You don't put a leader in. You could. You're not gonna.
Why would you?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think power pairs for some armies have always been a thing. But I think now every army I have looked at has had at least one or two power pairs that I looked at and went, ooh, that's compelling. And whatever you're out there playing, as you listen to this, whatever you're into, whatever your army is, there's probably a power pair or two you're going to take. And there are some forces that might lean more heavily into this than others. Looking at you, Necrons, who are going to like really combo out almost every unit in the army. But I think at the bare minimum, y'all, you're going to have one or two of these units that you are looking to amp up a little bit, to slap a turbocharger on, using some sort of hero to make them a little spicy.
Yeah, they're sort of the components you're using to build your combo, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the numbers, right? You take the leader can be the 2, the unit can be the other 2, and then that plus symbol is really going to come down to stratagems or putting them in the right spot. And that's how you get the combo together to finish out that equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is going to shift you a little bit. Also, this is one that I think will be less of an issue in casual settings. And that's that in the new edition, it can be prone to having skew lists if you so choose. Meaning, if you wanted to take a list that was all tanks, like Imperial Guard, I use as an example.
Very easy.
I need an HQ. Well, that's a tank commander. I need a bunch of units. I pick all tanks because I don't need battle line or anything. And before I know it, oops, all tanks. And maybe that is a list that someone can take, knowing that likely you're not going to have enough anti-armor to kill 80 bajillion tanks, and they will try to roll over you. And that can happen. And I feel like at tournaments or somewhere that is more competitively leaned, you might see someone trying to edge shoot like that. But I think in a casual setting where most people bring like whatever they've collected, you're probably not going to find a lot of that skew laying around.
Yeah, you're not going to see a guy, unless some dude's like super into tanks, you're not going to have like some guy at your local shop who's just like, oh yeah, I just happen to have 19 tanks laying around and I put them on the table.
Yeah, because the average player doesn't have the money to buy a bajillion tanks. Like, their bench is probably not that deep. It's probably one or two armies they've had that they've built over time. They got a lot of cool pieces they like. They probably have some options, but I doubt they have 6 copies of everything in their entire army book. That's going to be a little more rare in a casual setting. So I wanted to shout it out that it is a change, and it's something that you probably wouldn't have seen as directly as you would in like 8th or 9th. But just, I wouldn't be super worried about it if you're like us and playing down in like basements and stuff.
And I also think there's a positive side to this, right? Like you have the negative side that is like, oh, my buddy can bring all the tanks in the world, and he can reenact Fury as I'm over here getting murdered. Like,
John, I hate to tell you this, but Fury didn't go well for the tanks.
I know. I've just said it's a movie that reminded me of tanks. Tanks, Joseph, tanks. The other, like, you've ruined my train of thought. Oh, yeah, the positive side of this. The positive side of this is that you can kind of bring whatever you want, and you can get wacky with stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, previously, you were like, oh, well, I've been playing this army for like 3 editions now, and this unit used to be elites. Now they're HQs, and so I can only bring 3 of them. Or like, hey, this unit used to be fast attack, and now it's heavy support. And now all the other stuff that I have is also heavy support, so now I can't mix them. Now it's like, nope, put them all on the table.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Whatever you want.
Bring them. Bring the stuff that you want.
Your choice.
It's cool. It's great. Have fun.
Personally, I'm a fan of that.
I am too. The simplicity makes it much more playable for the average person. And pitchable to people who are newer, because they don't have to learn a bajillion keywords to just make the army. They can just make the army with stuff they think is cool.
And not all of them were necessarily very obvious or sensible as to what distinction they fell into, as to like why some single heroes are in elites instead of in the HQ section. which looked
Looking at you, Judiciary.
yeah, just there was some confusion there, and now that's gone. You just take what you want. Don't take more than 3. And overall, I think that is good, even if there could be skew. Like I think that is a good change in general.
And I think the same advice we've given time and time again still applies here. If you're playing in a casual setting, even if it's casually competitive, always have a conversation with your opponent about the type of game you're playing ahead of time, and so your opponent can let you know if they're planning on bringing a ton of tanks and they want to play a tank regimen against you, and then you can come prepared. And if not, you guys can come to an agreement on what sort of game you're going to play.
Mm-hmm.
These are not tournaments. At tournaments, it's no holds barred. Just go. Like, you never know what you're going to play. But you're playing with your buds. Talk it out. It's all right.
It just
no one's going to list build against you.
It just ain't worth the frustration. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we want to give just a couple of examples of what we're talking about here so that we can illustrate some of these concepts more effectively. I mean, as we said, we've played some 10th now, and have felt
Gonna play more.
Yeah, I really want to play more.
I'm excited to play more.
So am I, but you live so far away.
What are you doing Saturday?
I have lunch and afternoon plans. Sadly. I know. I don't like it either. Unfortunately, John,
We'll figure it out.
I have a social life.
No, you don't.
I can't just play Warhams all the time, as much as I would like to.
You could.
No, I got
We
a
could
job.
be 20 again. It's fine.
I've got a job. I don't want to be
Don't have to.
homeless again, John. Never again. Like, because we haven't thrown away all of our responsibilities, we have only played some Warhammer, not all the Warhammer. But I think we've seen a couple of things that sort of illustrate some of these points. So for me, when I think action monkeys, I think to my Eldar, right? There's a lot of cool hotness going on in Eldar land right now about like Wraith Knights and D cannons and, you know, big mortal wounds and like Hajuga Juga and 80 bajillion mortals. Hajuga Juga. Yeah, you know. Right?
I do know about the Chuga Chuga.
But if I'm being honest, like my little MVP is gotta be either Shroud Runners or Swooping Hawks. Swooping Hawks are a perfect example of what we're calling action monkeys. Swooping Hawks are a small unit that are a little 5-man unit of elves with wings, and they're little T3 dudes. They've got some shots that are okay, but they got a huge movement of like 14 inches. And they can deep strike. And at the end of the opponent's turn, if nothing is engaging them, they go back into redeploy. So you could redrop them every turn if you wanna.
Just be reactive to whatever cards you pull.
And they're like 70 points or something really tiny. Those little dudes got me just an obscene amount of points. Just an incredible number of victory points. Killed next to nothing, but didn't matter. It didn't matter. It wasn't their job. You know, they aren't the ones out there trying to like shift the Stompa off the table. Their job is to come in and win the game while everyone else is shifting the Stompa off the table. And boy howdy, they do it. I think them in Eldar, I think you're going to see Terminate, like a little 2-man Terminator unit in Custodes doing the same thing.
For sure.
Inceptors in Space Marines, you're going to see a number of them.
Good option.
The chicks with wings and pistols and Sisters of Battle, you're going to see some
also
of those.
Very good.
And just in demons, some of those like named demons that are by themselves, like the Changeling or whatever. You're gonna, and again, another great action monkey.
Commandos and orcs. That's another good option.
I think they're less good at it now, but that's a different subject.
They're better than others in the book. Maybe what's the Rocket Boys?
The Storm Boys. That's who I took.
Storm Boys. That's
I put in Commandos on my orc list initially and then dropped them and replaced them with Storm Boys.
The Scouts also in Space Marines. Pretty good.
Scouts pretty good. You know, there's a lot of these little units that don't hit really hard, but they're cheap and they have movement tricks. They're just gonna be great, y'all. And if you're playing any of those, if whatever force you're playing, go look in your book for action monkeys. It might be a hero. It might be just a small unit. But
Stealth suits. That was the one.
stealth suits, top
I'm sitting here
tier.
thinking about crisis suits.
Stealth suits are top tier for Tau right now. I cannot express to you how good they are. Being able to
Just suits in general.
to action monkey and forward deploy and deep strike and get bonuses to be not be hit, and their laser targeting gives extra bonuses. Like, it's all around great. Yeah, action monkeys. There's a ton of them. There's so many of them, and all of them are pretty good. Put a couple in your list. John, power pairs. What you got?
Power pairs. All right. So first one, I'm going to say the one that a lot of people, if you stake up on competitive stuff, probably know about. And if you've been one of my opponents for the last couple of weeks, you also know about it. It is the Nexos with acolytes that have demolition charges. Really, it's just a unit of like 10 dudes from North Florida with sticks of dynamite throwing it at something, and a dude who lets them use stratagems for free on it that's got a really cool like holographic frisbee. It's a time. It's very powerful.
I've been
So
to the
he goes
Panhandle, John. Yeah,
Yeah. About that, Gainesville. What's up?
Nothing's ever up in Gainesville, other than the incarceration rate.
Hey, now, we're not Jacksonville, all right? Hear me out. But, like, the Nexos, right? He goes into a unit of acolytes. That unit of acolytes can then drop using a stratagem that allows them to get within 3 inches, allowing them to use their once per game demolition charges that they throw.
Mm-hmm.
They get a bunch of bonuses to do so. Then you have the Nexos use another stratagem for free to make that more effective shooting to do a ton of damage. And you can do that with multiple units if you pull it off right. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Turbo effective. Yeah.
It's can't put into words how good it is. And that's not all that does. It also allows you to move your little tokens around in like your opponent's command phase, which you want to be doing as Genius of the Cult. So it's got multiple purposes, and the little unit has become like the core of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not to harp on Genius of the Cult, but I got another one in there, and that's pulling the Jackal Alphys in with the other dirt bike dudes, so you can get a bunch of movement shenanigans. That's also really fun. For Space Marines, the Judiciary with the Blade Guard veterans gives Blade Guard veterans a unit that really wants to be in melee, wants to excel at melee really well, and be like a counterpunch unit or like a really tough melee screen. Giving them the Judiciary for pretty cheap makes them fight first, which is really good.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much being able to fight first would change my games against Chaos Demons regularly.
Yeah, it changes the math. For me, I think of Custodian Guards and a Custodian Captain. Oh, buddy. Gives them 2 karates at once. So they get 2 effects of your choice every single fight phase. God, just really like shakes up that can of bees.
Another really good power pair is like in Guard, right? Ursula Creed and a 20-man block of like regular guardsmen with the Primary Psyker, right? That unit allows you to bring 2 leaders, which is unique. There's only a couple things that can do that. I think orcs can do it too, or orc boys. And what that lets you do is have a 4-up involve on regularized guardsmen from shooting. It's really good to protect your character. That's going to provide orders to your other units nearby, kind of turning it into even wider synergy. So keep an eye out for stuff like that, right? Like you're kind of layering the strategy there to really have a force multiplying effect, to really benefit and do different tools that are also flexible within the army. It's beyond just hammers and anvils. It's hammers, anvils, action monkeys, power pairs, blah, blah. And if you play Age of Sigmar, you're probably used to something like this.
Yeah.
Just now in 40K. And I think that that's good design, like good design-wise.
Yeah, I generally agree. Like, I find my lists are really well-rounded by comparison to 9th edition, especially, because the 9th, it really does skew killy, rather than necessarily super objective-y. The objectives were scored, but only because we were all just there to, like, murder each other on them, not necessarily to play around them, I felt. And here, I think that is less the case. I'm playing the mission, and using a lot of skill monkeys, and I do have a couple of power pairs in my lists, but rarely are my power pairs an unkillable 2-up re-rolling death ball, or whatever terrible, horrifying combo there was from ye olden days. And I think,
and it's really changed target priority to be like, I don't bring killy stuff to kill the everything. I bring the killy stuff to kill the stuff that's going to prevent me from getting my objectives.
Yep. They have a target that they are meant to attack, and you've got to find a way to get them to it. If you've got an anti-big horde unit and you get stuck into a tank, well, crap. You're going to be stuck for a while. And vice versa. But if you're good and you're skilled and you know how to sort of maneuver them around the field, you're going to be rewarded. And I think for me, that has just led to more generalist lists when I'm building stuff. And maybe that's just because I'm trying to cover all my bases, but for me, I feel like I end up with less skew in my own lists just because I'm trying to touch a little bit of everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think overall, that is the thing I want to end this with, that I think the changes to list building, while weird, and it's going to take some time to ruminate on them, and some armies have issues with list building because of transport capacities, or like what certain heroes can go into, and whether that makes them less desirable, or, blah, 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 blah. But in general, I think my final touch point for list building is I think it feels better now than previously.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think for me, part of that is the simplification of points. Not everyone is super into that. I personally am into that. And that plus the internal game changes to list building together, oh, what a time. It has kept me building lists far longer than 9th edition, where I did not enjoy list building.
Yeah. I actively want to play other factions because I just want to build lists and see what I can do because it's fun.
John,
have not.
You don't have to play them.
It has been many moons until that I have been excited to potentially play Dark Eldar. And I have built like 3 Dark Eldar lists. And there's a Dark Eldar army sitting in the closet in the other room.
Oh no.
Yeah.
What is this? I play elves and then you immediately want to play spiky elves?
Listen, you play Gruul. I play Rakdos. We are not the same.
No, we're not.
Yeah. we both play red. Just different shades of red.
Hugely different. Yeah, just the timing's hysterical. Like, Joe, you should play elves. And then immediately internally you start playing elves. Just
I'm not like gonna mainline them, but like I might pull them out for a game or two. You never know.
We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's just so good. It's so good. And I want to play more in 10th. And I think that's really the biggest thing that tells me that these changes feel good for a casual player, because I'm like a casual competitive player, whatever that means. But I want to play more of this game because of these changes, and that is probably the best endorsement I could give. Like,
yeah,
as people who are making a show, we want to try to explain our thoughts and our feelings so that it's just not like a 30-second episode with like a quick take that we do not give any context for.
Yo, what up? I read this on Twitter like 20 minutes ago. I fully believe it with my heart and soul.
I'll be taking no notes, no thoughts.
Head empty.
But like when John and I were kicking this around, he's like, what do we think of list building in 10th? And I'm like, it's dope. And really, that's the summation of
that's
my
the
thoughts.
pitch.
That's it.
It's dope.
It's dope. Like, I want to try to talk through it first so that this makes more sense. But in general, that's what I responded to. It's dope. Had a lot of fun with it. Can't wait to play more with it. And I hope that y'all are feeling the same thing, because we've been playing it for a few weeks now. And I would really like to hear what y'all are having out there in regular world, playing your own games at 10th. How's it going? Like, consider this just a little powwow to check in the comments or on social medias. But how is 10th going for you? We've mentioned in a past episode where like 10th has sort of felt like it has a weird dichotomy, where some people are saying it's absolutely terrible and unplayable trash if you're in the competitive scene, and I don't know how true that is or not.
It's Warhammer. It's always unplayable trash.
And yet I'm still playing.
Exactly.
But if you're in the casual scene, most people seem to be liking it. So I am interested to sort of just, check in the engine, see how everyone's doing out there. Drop it in the comments. If you got questions, love to hear them. If you got thoughts, love to hear those too. Also, y'all, just like a little note, as we are recording this, we have hit 300 subscribers.
It's phenomenal.
It's so exciting. And we are planning video content in addition to the podcast. Because we have seen how much people like shorter form videos, like that 15, 20-minute length sort of thing we did for the faction focuses. People really enjoyed it, and we want to continue making them because people seem to really like it. So, John, I think we have to do it.
I think we're going to do it. I don't think there's no, have to. You don't have to, drag me kicking and screaming. We're just going to do it.
Yeah, but John, we're going to talk about lore. I think that's what we're going to do. We just got to talk about lore.
Yeah, I think we got to talk about lore. I think lore is the ticket. If you want something beyond lore, we'll still give it to you. We're probably going to cover some of the Codex releases on longer episodes like this. And if you want small little rule tidbits, just let us know the kind of content you want.
Yep.
We'll probably just make it for you.
We will.
But we're going to start off with lore.
Because in the comments, most people seem to really enjoy our flavor pitches and our faction focuses more than they did some of our other stuff. A lot of people were super kind and super open about how they liked how we pitched factions from a narrative perspective. Like the Sisters, for example, or the Orcs. And if people like how we pitch stuff narratively, then let's talk about some narrative stuff. Yeah. Because it's also John and I's favorite bit. So
it is. We would drop this game no tomorrow if there was not good lore behind it.
Yeah, if the story was deleted, Joe would be deleted. All my interest gone.
We have dropped so many games because there's not lore to go behind it with. It's hard to want to sit and paint something for hours, or play with games for hours, or plan huge events to play with all of our friends without the backing of man, I read 46 Horus Heresy novels.
Ooh, I cried about a winged spaceman. Hey,
that spaceman's got daddy issues, and I felt personally attacked. I'm gonna play his army.
I'm gonna do his war crimes. Yeah, I just looking at it, y'all want lore. We want to do lore. So I think that's what we're going to be working on over here. And if you do have thoughts or requests, please. John pitched it once, and we'll pitch it again. Send it over. No idea is a bad idea. And in the meantime, we're going to be shifting out of LARP braid back into 10th braid.
Remix.
Ooh, dick. Back into 10th braid as we continue to work on the hobbies over here. Because there's armies to build and newbies to teach. That's going to be all of our opinions, bona fide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see you on the next one.